Hi, everybody, and welcome back to a new episode of Masters of Marketing. Now, I think this episode is the furthest geographical distance that I've ever recorded, which is very exciting. But I would love to welcome Charlie Grinnell, I hope I pronounced that right, the co-CEO of RightMetric and a self-proclaimed marketing outside nerd who's worked with Red Bull, Lululemon, and Meta. Charlie, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks very much for having me. It's great to be here.
Great to have you. We did kind of have some technical difficulties. The universe tried to keep us apart, but we got there in the end.
Yep.
So tell me, let's jump right in. What is
Yep.
what is RightMetric?
Yeah, RightMetric. So I co-founded the company 8 years ago. We're a marketing research firm, but we focus on a specific area of marketing research that we call outside. And
Okay.
so this phrase outside, we help marketers eliminate all the different blind spots they have within their marketing organization using external digital data. So stuff like audience behavior data, competitive benchmarking data, content signals, etc. So we started the company, yeah, like I said, 8 years ago. We pull a whole bunch of data into a single place. We have our own methodologies, analysts, strategists, and some proprietary tech behind the scenes that allows us to basically see and count things to help marketers make sure that they're doing the right things to drive their business forward.
I mean, and honestly, isn't that what every marketer wants? To actually know that they're doing the right thing. There's, I feel like there's so much experimentation, which you need.
Mm,
Like in marketing, you need because sometimes something takes off and you go, wow, didn't see that
mhm.
working. Like, great that it did, but, didn't see it any other way around. No, that's
Mhm.
amazing. And like I said, you've worked with Red Bull, Lululemon, and Meta. And I think, if I'm right in saying that some of them are now your clients as well.
Yep. Yeah. So I worked in house on the brand side for many years. I actually got my start in video production of all places.
Hmm.
So I grew up in Vancouver, Canada, and for those of you listening who have been there or around there, there's mountains there, and it's very outdoorsy. So I grew up skiing and mountain biking, and a lot of my friends were interested in that. And so uh, when I realized that my dreams of being a professional skier or mountain biker were not going to come true,
Oh,
I
no.
decided to pick up a camera and started to film them. And as I started to film them, luckily they were actually quite talented, and so they started getting these different sponsorship offers. And as part of
Hmm.
that, uh, they would go, "Hey, man, can you come film me doing this thing? I need it for my sponsor." And so that was kind of like my first interface with a marketing organization, where I was filming a lot of this athlete stuff, and then giving it to marketing organizations. And so, yeah, I was in the video production world for almost 5 years, traveling around filming and editing stuff. And as I was handing over these videos to these marketing organizations, what I
Mm.
realized was it was starting to everything I was making wasn't going on to movies or TV or DVD. It was going on the internet. And specifically it was going on social. And so I was like, huh, maybe this social media thing is like here to stay. And maybe I should
Yeah.
learn this. I don't think this is going anywhere. And so yeah, that led me to I started working in house for a Canadian brand called Arterix.
Hmm.
Really awesome outdoor technical gear. So I was working in house there as a video editor, making brand video, that sort of stuff. And then I ended up leaving Arterix to go work at an agency in Vancouver called
Hmm.
Invoke. And Invoke is the agency where Hootsuite came from, one of the kind of like first social media management
Ah.
tools.
Yeah, I just say I think
A-
everyone at least has heard of Hootsuite, if not
of
has
course,
experience using it.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I left the brand side, went agency side, and I was working kind of a hybrid role of digital strategy as well as video production, because
Hmm.
like video was just kind of creeping into everything. And so while I was working there full time, I was still doing contract video production work for Red Bull. And a lot of
Yeah.
my friends were either becoming Red Bull athletes or started to work at the brand or whatever. And then one day I got a phone call saying, "Hey, would you move to Toronto?" And I said, "For what?" And they said, "A job, you idiot." I was like, "Oh, okay. I've never been to Toronto." And 2 weeks later, I moved to Toronto. And so
Amazing.
I was in Toronto for about 3 years and working on a team that managed Red Bull's
Hmm.
digital footprint in Canada. So I was there, yeah, like I said, for almost 3 years. And then you know the world of Red Bull kind of sucks you in. You get to touch so many different industries and operate
Hmm.
at such scale. And then I ended up getting moved from there to Austria to the global headquarters. So I was living in Salzburg. And so I was in Austria for a while, working leading social strategy for all sports at Red Bull, which was one of the coolest jobs ever, I would say.
That must have been
Um,
insanely cool just to see behind the scenes of everything that Red Bull does because
super
they're
cool.
marketing with their athletes.
Yep.
Like, and I want to say almost the challenges they think up. In
Yep.
Innsbruck, for anyone who doesn't know, we've got the Olympic ski jump and they have a 400-meter climb. So it's just a race up. That's it. It's something that every kid did on a slide in a playground. You know, it's the exact same idea. You're just climbing up and you just see these athletes who have trained for it and they're doing it.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's anywhere between kind of 5 minutes to 7 minutes, I think, although I could be wrong.
Mhm.
And they're just dead at the end. Like that's it. They need someone
Yep.
to like bring them back down. But the ingenuity behind that is crazy.
Yeah. Well, and they don't just do it in Innsbruck; they do it in like 75
No, of
countries.
course.
So
Yeah, yeah.
it's
It's
yeah.
it's everywhere.
Um, anyway, so I was working in house at Red Bull, and then I ended up moving back to Vancouver because that's where I'm from. And I ended up landing at a Canadian brand called Aritzia. And Aritzia
Hmm.
is, for those of you listening, it's kind of like Zara. And I landed there as head of social, which is I find hilarious because if you look at those of you watching this, I'm a bald bearded guy. Um, so probably don't strike you as someone who is well versed in women's fashion. And so yeah, I was there for a while, and then my co-founder and I kind of reconnected. We started
Hmm.
talking about, hey, if we were going to start something, what would it be? And that's how we started RightMetric. And so it's been 8 years and counting. So there's kind of my journey in the marketing world. It started on the creative side, worked in house for a long time, and then the idea of starting RightMetric was really to solve the pain point that I had, which was how can I look externally and harness these signals because they're so valuable. But it was very fragmented, very time consuming, very
Hmm.
expensive. And so, yeah.
No, I think that's amazing. And I think for anyone listening, that a lot of people really resonate on your journey into marketing. Because I
Mm,
think so many people, they come at it from, it's not even that what you were doing was outside of marketing. It's just very
yeah,
different to what you are now. And that it's
totally.
blurred kind of the traditional boundaries, I would say, between marketing and media. Like that's
Hmm.
completely blurred these days.
Yep.
So then to kind of carry on with that, I think it's safe to say that like there's a lot of brands that do think like a media company. But
Hmm.
why do you think brands need to think like a media company?
Yeah. So this kind of phrase, marketing like a media company, is something that we've
Mhm.
all probably heard, but
Yeah.
I think it sounds like it's a good sound bite, but we're like, okay, like what is that? What does that mean?
Yeah.
Right. And
Mhm.
so I'll use Red Bull as an example, but we've seen this across industries, right? So Red Bull, whether you buy the energy drink or not, you are going to spend time consuming the brand and the product. And the
Mhm.
product is actually content, right? So you're going to
Yeah.
follow them on social. You're going to go to redbull.com and read an in-depth article. You're going to watch something on Red Bull TV, right? And so this idea of whether you buy our product, you are still going to touch our brand and come in contact with our brand. And the experience is going to be awesome. And we're not even going to be selling you anything. And
Yeah.
so this kind of like mentality of thinking like that can actually start to sell more product. And so we're seeing that actually in B2B, right? You
Mhm.
saw HubSpot buy The Hustle, which was
Yeah.
a newsletter, right? And then the podcast My First Million. So HubSpot, a SaaS company, is buying a media company. Why? Because the audience is there, the attention is there. And so this
Yeah.
idea of marketing like a media companies are experts in attention. And so marketing like a media company means you need to become an expert at gathering attention. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, I think this idea of how can we actually continue to talk to people and earn their attention without selling to them, you need to be thinking like a media company, which means you're probably going to spend money creating content, even though it's not going to sell your core product today.
Mhm.
So that's what I mean when I say market like a media company, and we're starting to see this across the board. You're starting to see SaaS companies buy media entities. You're starting to see consumer brands lean heavier into content marketing. Right? You've seen this with like Yeti coolers, right? Like they're putting out these long feature length documentaries. You're seeing Arc'teryx do this with
Yeah.
their different athlete stories. Like there's almost every industry that we could point to where there's an example of this. And I think what's really interesting is with so many different examples of this across so many different industries, either one of two things is happening. Everyone's copying everybody and they're asleep at the wheel and it's not working, or it's working.
Yeah. Yeah,
And the
absolutely.
amount of money being put into it means that it's working because it would cost so much and that would be such a waste if we didn't actually think that that was working. So
So then to just kind of pick apart a little point that you just said is because you
Yeah.
sort of said obviously there's two. Either it's working or it's
Yeah.
not. And you said that the reason could be that people are copying each other.
Yeah.
So is this idea that trends are really not the way to go with some things? Because you can argue on socials that trends are, let's say, a short-term fix to get a
Mm.
lot of attention very quickly when
Yeah.
done well and when relevant, I suppose.
Yep.
But are you kind of saying that if a company is starting or a brand is thinking like a media company, they need to be bringing in fresh ideas all the time?
Yeah. So I think trends are definitely part of a strategy, but the key word there is
Hmm.
part. Um,
Yeah.
there's an exercise. There's an exercise that I love and that is, I think, super important that every brand needs to do. So
Okay.
you're sitting at a brand right now,
Hmm.
and you're not allowed to talk. You have to talk on behalf of the brand, but you are not allowed to talk about the product or service that you sell. What would you say? What would the brand say?
Okay.
That exercise is so valuable because it's basically like, okay, I'm not allowed to say, buy this can of Red Bull.
Hmm.
Cool. What are the other things that we can talk about? Red Bull's whole things is Red Bull gives you wings, right?
Yeah.
So cool. What does Red Bull gives you wings mean? It means elevating humanity. It means pushing humanity forward into whatever the different thing is. Now, that can be different depending on the different ecosystems that they're
Hmm.
in. But I think about when I worked at the Aritzia, the women's retailer, right?
Yeah.
Cool. If we couldn't talk about the clothes that we sold, what else could we talk about? Well, we could talk about design. We could talk about music. We could talk about pop culture. We could talk
Hmm.
about, all of these other things that aren't like, hey, buy this jacket right now, or hey, buy this, skirt right
Yeah.
now. Right. And so that idea, once you actually start to get really clear on what can we talk about as a brand, then you can start to layer trends in because when you have that filter, that baseline filter,
Yeah.
when different trends come up, you can then strategically evaluate to say, hey, should we actually participate in this? Yes or no? And sometimes and there's a few different factors that go into that. Number one, is this relevant to the stuff that we talk about as a brand? Duh.
Yeah.
Number two, uh, do we actually have a good idea to hop onto that trend? Right.
Hmm.
And number three, operationally, can we actually do it? Do we actually have the bandwidth or
Yeah.
budget or whatever, right? So there's like a little kind of rubric there. But like, yes, absolutely, trends should be in the mix. But there's a way that you think about them and how can you build this system so that you can evaluate them and then choose to jump on them or not. And oftentimes, I think about it like baseball, right? Not every baseball player swings the bat at every single pitch that comes down. They wait for the right pitch that's their
Yeah.
pitch. It's the same thing with trends. You don't have to hop onto every trend. And a matter of fact, if you're hopping onto every trend, you're probably not going to be effective.
Yeah, absolutely. I really liked also the list that you just gave, the 3 points, and the one at the end being like, "Can you afford this? Is it actually going to be good?" Because I think I mean, I think everyone has, but you can see a lot of brands, companies, whatever they're selling when they hop on the trends, and you just go, "Ah, it's kind of missing." Because either
Totally.
it should have had less money spent on it, this should just
Yep.
be grab your phone, get outside the office, and do it, or it was one of those ones of going, no, this became a trend because it was a whole campaign. Like there's so much money behind it. You should
Totally.
also be aware of if it's not going to hit on that point from a content point of view for the attention,
Yep.
that's okay as well. Like that's
Totally.
also it's okay to
Yeah.
miss it. So to
Yeah.
have content as kind of the core product of
Hmm.
a marketing strategy, like what do you think of that then? I mean, obviously you're coming at it from a you don't explain your background, but still, like, what do you think of content as a core product?
I mean, content is the core product, and I think more
Hmm.
brands need to think about that. And so, what I mean by that is like, cool, let's say I sell, I don't know, I'm looking at something on my desk, a fidget spinner. Cool.
Yeah.
Like, yes, this is what I sell and this is what I make money with. And we put a ton of time and attention into this.
Hmm.
We should be putting the same time and attention into content
Yeah.
because number one, it's so competitive out there to earn someone's attention. It is so competitive. And so like that's just the bar to earn someone's attention. I'll give an example. Mr. Beast, the biggest YouTuber in the world, has a
Yeah.
thumbnail team.
I'm not
Not a thumbnail
surprised. Like I've
person.
never
So
heard
so
of
let's
it.
just yeah,
Yeah.
but like let's just talk about that for a second. Not a video team, not a video
And
person, not a designer that does a couple thumbnails on the side.
yeah.
A team of people that all they do is design thumbnails. And you think that your crappy ad is going to earn attention in the person who's also watching that Mr. Beast video.
I love that, but that's I'd never heard like I mean it's weird because I'm not surprised. Like I'm not
Yeah.
surprised the amount of content that gets pushed out, and like
Yeah.
this is the perfect example, I think, of that kind of balance between you've got the creativity and the storylines. You know, you've got that
Yeah.
there, you need it there, but it needs to go a lot hand in hand with your editorial calendar and
Of
like
course.
consistent publishing. And of course, like someone like Mr. Beast, who has such a huge content, like he is content, he's YouTube. You know, this is
Yeah.
what everyone knows it has. Like it doesn't surprise me he's not that team, but at the same time, I've never heard of that before, and that's amazing. You know, imagine putting
Well,
that on your CV.
I mean, that's a wild job title to be like, I did thumbnails. But
Yeah.
that's a larger metaphor for how competitive it is and
Hmm.
how important. Because guess what? Thumbnail, literally, that thumbnail designer is optimizing for a fraction of a second to get someone to click. So that's the first part of it, right? Then the second part of it is, okay, what's in the first second of video? What's in the first 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 12 seconds? How is the video being shot and edited to continue to rehook people and retain them as they go?
Yeah.
Right. So everything that we've just talked about from a content perspective, people might go, well, that's crazy. You're getting so into the weeds and into the details. Well, I think the punchline is that if we think about supply and demand from a content perspective,
Yeah.
everyone only has two eyes, one brain, two ears, you know? And so like the kind of supply is like there's a fixed amount of people that can watch, but the content, the amount of content being produced is
Hmm.
through the roof, right? And I've just said Mr. Beast. We're not talking about Red Bull. When I left Red Bull in 2017, we were publishing 650 posts a day on social. That's in
Wow.
2017,
Yeah.
right? We're not talking about
Hmm.
Netflix, right? Who publishes a new show every day that's regionalized by language, right? So this content explosion that's happening
Hmm.
means that the bar for earning someone's attention is way higher. And I think that what we as marketers need to do, regardless of whether we're selling sugar water, fidget spinners, yoga pants, whatever, we need to put the same care and attention and scrutiny into our content that we do to our product, because content is the actual product. We need to produce content so people spend time with us to give our brand a fighting chance so that they buy our widget at the end of the day.
Absolutely. So if we're looking at kind of the dive into the content, that also includes
Mm.
the science behind it. It's not
Yep.
just the creativity. It's a big part of it, don't get me wrong,
Yep.
but like that's diving into the data and the analytics and the behavioral science
Yep.
that goes into all of that, right? So like what would you say is like I know I just mentioned the trouble things, but like the science behind modern marketing, like with media or as media?
Well, I think it's so funny. This has been the crux of my career. I'm a creative
Okay.
at heart. I made videos,
Hmm.
and I was making videos and I was giving them to very nice, well-intentioned marketing people who would bury them on the internet and get them no views.
Wonderful. Just whatever.
And
And I
so,
think every videographer listening has just gone, yeah, like
yeah,
that's, yeah.
and so there's a few like spiky points of view here that I have. So
Okay.
number one, if you are working in marketing as a creative and you are collecting a paycheck from a company and you're sitting in the marketing organization and you are not trying to create content that performs well based on the marketing and business metrics of the business, you should walk out the door, the art galleries down the street, and go make art projects over there.
Okay.
That's probably going to offend some people, but like
Hmm.
marketing is art for the sake of commerce, commerce being the key word. You want to go make
Yeah.
short films and not monetize them and like go make like true art pieces? Great, go do that. But when you're sitting inside of a business and its job is to make money and it has a responsibility to the shareholders to make money and grow and like welcome to capitalism, like,
Yeah.
do that. Now, from a creative perspective, I think what's really exciting and what actually pushed me to go from like shooting and editing video to what I do now is the understanding and quantification of behavior. So to your point about behavioral
Yeah.
science and everything was as we started to get this signal and feedback from content that we produce, so we'd publish content and it would perform or not perform, and then we'd be able to see, oh, did this generate views? Oh, what did we do there? Did we use
Hmm.
close-up shots or did we use wide establishing shots? Did we use quick cuts in the first 3 seconds? Was it live action or animation? Did it have music
Yeah.
or no music? Did it have subtitles? Yes or no? Like all of these things are things that we can count and start to understand. And guess what? Use that for the next piece of content and the next piece of creative and continue to tailor things based on how our audience is behaving. So if that was
Hmm.
like 7 years ago, 8 years ago, now there's even more things that we can see. We can start to see watch time. We can start to see viewership drop off. Oh, right here, half the audience dropped off. What was on screen? Oh, weird, our crappy ad. Or, oh, weird, this
Yeah.
kind of like filler stuff. Like that then can actually be like, oh, from that will influence how do we storyboard this? How do we make sure that people aren't dropping off? Like this is all stuff that we can see now. It's just a matter of if we actually want to look at it and use it to fuel our inputs in the future.
And to add like a little, maybe my own spiky point there too as
Sure.
well. I just love
Yeah.
that phrasing. Um, is that sometimes marketers at any level of an organization, whether it's like yourself, co-CEO, or someone that's just come on interning, is that when you're looking at these sort of metrics, and especially behavioral science, is you've got to put your ego aside. Something you thought
Totally.
might have worked, and it sucks. Like it sucks so much when you think something was going to work, and then it's blatantly telling you that people hated it. You know, they dropped off when there was a red flash on the screen. They just did. It doesn't. It could be because it's red. It could be because it was a flash. But the point is,
Yep.
it's there. But like that ego needs to be set aside, and I think that can be really hard for some people. But then I think that
Yes.
also then you kind of have the right, if you have the right team and the right mindset,
Hmm.
it's not as hard. But then getting to that point is even harder. So
Yeah.
there's a very subtly bringing in like another point there.
Well,
What would you
well,
say is like how to build the right team and mindset to kind of negate the negatives that can come in, even though we're all human
yeah.
and it all happens, of course.
Yeah, so your ego point is well taken, and I completely agree. Like, I'm like retweet exactly. Like
Excellent.
there is so much uh ego in marketing.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like, hey, same. Like we all have egos.
Hmm.
But I think what's really, really interesting is, we all have our preconceived notion of what reality is, right? I've worked in this business for a long time. I know this industry. I am our core customer, right? Like
Yeah.
we all have that. And what's so fascinating, I think, as I've spent more time sitting with different data sets, having people way smarter than me pull things together and show
Hmm.
behaviorally, not what people say they do, behaviorally, what they
Yeah.
actually do, you get a really interesting look of you're like, whoa, that challenges my assumption. That challenges what I thought. And you know what? At the end of the day, my job is to earn those people's attention. And so I think like what goes into some of the best marketers, from like a people perspective and like a team makeup
Hmm.
perspective, I think there's two things. Number one, um, they're willing to experiment. They're kind of like mad scientists,
Yeah.
but the thing about scientists is they're not doing random experiments. They're using like scientific principles where they're
Hmm.
like continuing to test things and try things while not just kind of going out and like randomly kind of throwing crap at the wall. So that's number one.
Okay.
Is I think you need to have that kind of like scientific experimental mindset. Now,
Yeah.
I can hear probably some creatives being like, "Oh, like that is not how I work." You can still be creative as a scientist.
Hmm.
Absolutely. You can be creative with anything. You need to have constraints, right? Like that's where creativity comes from is these constraints. So this idea of continuing to test and using that as your creative outlet is super, super valuable. Um, the other thing I think about is I love this analogy. There's chefs and there's line cooks. And
Okay.
so I think this is a more broad like business analogy, but I think
Hmm.
it works really well for marketers is everyone should strive to be a chef and not a line cook. And what I mean by that is a line cook is someone that works at a chain restaurant that assembles a series of steps. Put the rice in the thing, saute it, whatever, go. A chef is someone who goes, "Oh, what's happening around us? What are some
Hmm.
things that are relevant to, oh, the stove's running a bit hot. That's interesting. Oh, this is fresh and in season and near our restaurant. Cool. I'm going to pull some of that in and I'm going to be creative, right? So, this idea of being a chef and not being a line cook, I think is super, super relevant as a skill set in marketing. Because if you're working in marketing, it isn't going to be step one, two, three, four, five, six, right? Today, it
Yeah.
might be step one, two, three, four, five, six. And then we get off this call and step three and step four are completely irrelevant now. And you're like,
Yeah.
okay. like welcome to marketing, right? So like if you want something that is so rigid and like straightforward and linear, finance is over there. Go there. Follow the generally
And
accepted
anyone
accounting
working in
principles.
finance is just like, oh my God, the therapy needed afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So yeah, I probably offended somebody there, but I just go, I think about this, this idea of can you adapt on the fly? Can you be creative,
Hmm.
but also still be rooted in business? Right. So those are two things that jump out to me.
And I mean, I think I really liked what you said is that the chef and the don't say linebacker. I was like,
Line
that's wrong.
cook,
That's a line coach.
line cook.
It's like you said that it's a skill set. It's not a mindset because it's
Totally.
okay to also be that person that goes, in my everyday life, I don't think like a chef. That's fine because, and it's something that anyone progressing in any career at any level, no matter how long they've been
Yeah,
in it, needs to carry on learning stuff. And
totally.
that's it. Like you just need to
Absolutely.
be able to. And I don't think maybe it's spoken about enough that you need to have that your skill set developing, but you don't know, especially in marketing, how that's going to develop.
Oh, I mean, 4 years ago, none of us in marketing were thinking about learning AI,
Absolutely. When
right?
TikTok
It
came
was
out, I
like, it
remember
was like,
everyone going, "Oh, it's not going to be a thing. It's just
yeah,
Instagram, right? Like it's
yeah.
YouTube, and now it's what the biggest, if not
Or
one
even
of one of."
when I first started, a thing that gave me a leg up was there were social media managers, and then I came in as a video editor. And what did I know how to do? I knew how to chop and edit my own video that I
Hmm.
could then publish.
Yeah.
That was the skill set. Well, now it's like, cool. How are we starting to use AI for different things? How can I start to interpret numbers? How can I start to test things? How can I, et cetera, rewrite copy, like whatever the thing is. It's just so funny where it's like, yeah, welcome. We're going to have to continue to learn. And it
It
gone are the
never
days
ends.
of hey, I got my business degree, and
Hmm.
I'm a business person, and cool, like now I'm done school and now I go do the thing. And it's like, yeah, welcome. Like there are things that you and I aren't even on our radar that are going to be full-time jobs
Yeah,
for us in 12 months from now.
absolutely.
Just the
Hot
nature of the
take is
industry.
hot take is you don't always need to come at it from the academic side. Like I kind of die on that hill sometimes.
You were talking to a university dropout.
You see, no, I did get my bachelor's and then the master's dropped out, but just it wasn't
See,
happening. I was kind
you
of
have
like you,
a degree and a half
a
more than I have.
degree.
I have zero.
Or as my dad likes to say, he's like, I've got a degree and my 10-yard swimming certificate. Like, what else do you need? What else do you need from me right now?
That's
Um,
awesome.
okay. It's a good one, isn't it? Okay, so then to play maybe devil's advocate slightly,
Yeah.
but because you've got such a straight kind of background with marketing and all these different
Mm.
areas, what are the challenges that you've come up against? Like, especially when, what we've been talking about is like we've got content to the product and why every brand needs to think like a media company. We've looked into kind of the psyche behind it and Edo and
Yeah.
everything else. So what challenges have you come up against that you're allowed to talk about?
Yeah, so a good friend of mine, his name's Chris Sparling. He runs a holding company that has like 40 or 50 different businesses. And he's someone
Hmm.
who I view him as like a Yoda on all things business. And he has this one
Brilliant.
phrase that I think summarizes something so well. In business, there are no such thing as problems, only people problems. And I think
Oh.
that when you actually think of all the stresses in any business, a customer's being an asshole, a vendor's being an asshole,
Hmm.
a boss is being an asshole, an employee's being an asshole. Like,
Yeah.
it all comes down to people, right?
Yeah.
And so I actually think that that's been a huge learning for me in the business world, specifically around starting a business and specifically in marketing, right? We talked about ego, right? We talked about understanding how people behave. They're difficult and
Hmm.
complicated and emotional and all these different things, right? So yeah, I think this idea of really understanding psychology, that's something that I have spent a lot of time trying to learn. Psychology across the board, whether it's understanding how people behave to market to them, understanding what motivates people to want to work, understanding what people's incentives are, et cetera, et
Mm.
cetera. So that is, I think, is something that I'd be sitting here lying to you if I said, "Oh yeah, it's been all like smooth sailing," right? Like building a business is difficult,
Yeah.
and yeah, the world is changing, right? And there's things that are changing that are forcing difficult conversations. Whether it's things about HR, whether it's things about marketing, whether it's challenging people's belief systems, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, so I think people is definitely a main one. Um, I also think a big challenge has really been around education. And
Mm.
what I mean by that is educating others on change, right? And
Okay.
what I mean by that is when I say educating other people on change is like the world is changing and like we are seeing it, but
Yeah.
to your earlier point, like people might be stuck in their ways and education of changing and challenging people's way of thinking takes
Yeah.
a long time. It's
Oh
not going to
yeah.
happen this month. It's not going to happen this quarter. And again, it goes back to that ego conversation and people going, but this is how I've always kind of done it. And I don't believe that. And people feel under attack. And so I think, like, the two things is like people and then related to educating and teaching.
Fair. Yeah, I think that's fair because I think also any of us, like we have internal biases and prejudice and everything else, but we also have our safe little box. We have
Totally.
that thing that went really well or that thing that went really wrong that we
Yep.
learned a lot from. And because
Yep.
we learned from it, we're like, yeah, this is my safe space. I know how to do this. It's really good. But in reality, maybe we did that 5 years ago, maybe 10,
Yep.
15, 25, and it was a great lesson to learn at the time,
Hmm.
but you shouldn't carry on repeating it now. Maybe you should.
Absolutely.
Maybe it should be something that you just need to look into more behind. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think something you just said really sticks out to me. And so there's a really awesome author and book. So the author's name is
Hmm.
Shane Parrish, and he has
Okay.
a blog called Farnham Street. And I think the URL is like fs.blog. If you go to fs.blog, you'll land there. So he's written a few books. The first is called the Great Mental Models, and they're up here on the shelf behind me. He wrote these kind of like mental models, and it's like,
Hmm.
what are these mental models that we can view the world? Um, and then his most recent book is called Clear Thinking, and it's a New York Times bestseller. And uh, awesome read, talks a lot about this, but there's something that as we're thinking through and going through problems, he talks about this idea of having a decision journal. And
Oh,
this idea of a decision journal is fascinating because and some people go, oh, it's going to take way too long and I'm never going to do that, blah 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 blah.
yeah.
Fair. But hear me out. So this idea of a decision journal is anytime you're facing a big decision. Now, you don't do this for lunch. What am I going to eat for lunch? You're not using that. But like,
Fair.
okay, let's say there's a big decision that needs to be made. He has this template and this framework where you kind of write down like, what are the assumptions I have right now? What is my mindset that is influencing this? What is true today? And how could this go wrong? How could this go right? Like all of these types of questions, right?
Yeah.
And then and then part of that is also like we don't have to rush into decisions. So like
Hmm.
you don't actually have to make the decision today. So write all this down and then go away for 1, 2, 3 days, a week, whatever it is,
Yeah.
and then come back and revisit it and look at that stuff.
Let it
And
marinate.
you start let it marinate, right? And in your subconscious, like as you sleep, whatever, like all this stuff is kind of rattling around. And you'll look back and go, oh wow, I didn't think about this, or I didn't think about that, or oh, that was my mindset at the time. And the kind of punchline and the kicker is as you start to do this with decisions, you're
Hmm.
building a library of knowledge and you can kind of come and look back. And I think what's fascinating with AI is you can put all that, take photos of that, put that into Chat GPT or whatever the thing is, and go, hey, what are some of the patterns here? What are some changes? And you can start to kind of like chat with yourself in a previous time while you were making big decisions.
Oh wow. Yeah, because as you were saying that, I was kind of like, okay, I understand why this is good and everything else. And then with that comment, I was like, yeah, it would probably also reflect back some home truths that anyone else trying it, but like you kind of go, oh wow, like didn't see that because you're the person
Totally.
that you are, of course.
Totally.
That's
And I
amazing.
mean,
No, we'll definitely try and link that underneath the
yeah,
when this goes live.
yeah,
That's amazing. Thank you so much for that. In traditional masters of marketing fashion, I've had too much of a good time talking. We've now slightly run over time. So we're gonna have to wrap up now, I'm afraid. Charlie, thank you
yep,
so much for coming on. This has been absolutely wonderful.
yeah. Thank you
And
very much for
to
having me.
all of
It's been fun.
it's been great. And to all of our listeners, we will be back soon.